The email arrived a week after the flood, a clinical, impersonal thing that sealed my fate. Effective immediately, the property at 14V, Willow Creek Lane is deemed uninhabitable. My landlord, a faceless corporation, offered no solutions, no sympathy. Just a digital eviction notice, cold and final. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. My tiny studio apartment, my sanctuary, my canvas, my only real home in years, now a sodden, moldering wreck. Everything I owned, everything I'd painstakingly built, reduced to a health hazard. I had nowhere to go. My parents were a continent away, our relationship a carefully maintained detente of infrequent phone calls and holiday cards. Friends, yes, I had friends, but imposing myself on anyone felt like an admission of a failure I couldn't quite articulate. I was 32, an artist teetering on the edge of a breakthrough, or so I told myself, and suddenly, utterly adrift. The only person who showed an ounce of human concern was Evelyn Reed. She owned the entire building, a grand Victorian that had been carved into half a dozen apartments over the decades. I'd seen her occasionally, a tall, imposing woman with a severe silver bob and eyes that missed nothing, usually when she was striding through the rain with a briefcase or tending to the meticulously manicured rose garden that spilled over the front fence. Our interactions had been limited to polite nods, rent checks, and a single, tense conversation about a leaky faucet. She was the landlord, I was the tenant. A clear, unbreached line. Until the flood. The storm had been biblical, a relentless downpour that turned Willow Creek into a raging river. The basement apartments, mine included, had borne the brunt of it. I'd waded out, ankle-deep in murky water, clutching a single backpack of irreplaceable sketches and my laptop, watching my life float away. Evelyn had been there, directing emergency services, her face grim, her usually immaculate clothes streaked with mud. She hadn't said much to me then, just a curt, "Are you all right?" before turning back to the chaos. I'd assumed that was the extent of her involvement. But then, the next morning, as I sat on a damp park bench, trying to figure out how to stretch the last of my savings, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "This is Evelyn Reed," a cool, precise voice said. "I understand you have nowhere to go." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, delivered with an unnerving certainty that made me feel entirely exposed. My chest tightened. I hated feeling vulnerable, hated needing help. "I'm managing," I lied, my voice thin. A beat of silence. "No, you're not," she countered, her tone unwavering. "Come to my apartment. We need to talk," and then she hung up. Her apartment was on the top floor, the grandest of them all, occupying the entire third story. I'd always imagined it to be a fortress of polished wood and antique furniture, a reflection of her formidable presence. The reality was both grander and softer than I'd anticipated. The door, a heavy oak, opened into a vast living space bathed in the warm glow of afternoon sun. Bookshelves lined every wall, overflowing with volumes that looked well-loved. A grand piano stood in one corner, its polished surface reflecting the light. The air smelled faintly of old paper and something citrusy, like lemon verbena. Evelyn was standing by a large bay window, looking out over the rain-slicked street. She turned as I entered, her silver hair catching the light. She was dressed in a tailored navy pantsuit, as always, but her expression held a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher, concern, perhaps, or a weary resignation. "Come in, Alara," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. She gestured towards a deep leather armchair. "Sit." I perched on the edge, feeling dwarfed by the opulent surroundings, my damp clothes suddenly feeling terribly out of place. "Thank you for seeing me," I mumbled, my gaze darting around the room, trying to avoid her direct stare. She sat opposite me, in a matching armchair, her hands clasped in her lap. "Let's dispense with the pleasantries, Alara. Your apartment is gone. The damage is extensive. It will be months, if ever, before it's habitable again." Her words, though factual, hit me like a fresh wave. I swallowed, my throat tight. "I know. The corporation sent an email." "The corporation is an impersonal entity," she said, a hint of disdain in her voice. "I am not. I own this building, and I have a responsibility. And frankly, I don't like the idea of my tenants sleeping on park benches. Her eyes, a startling shade of gray, met mine. They were sharp, intelligent, but there was a depth there, a shadow that hinted at a past I couldn't begin to imagine. I have a proposition for you. My heart gave a little lurch. This was it. The charity offer, the pity handout. I braced myself. I have a spare room, she continued, her gaze unwavering. It's small, but it has a private bathroom. You can stay here indefinitely until you get back on your feet. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Indefinitely? In her apartment? My mind reeled. It was an offer I couldn't refuse, a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. But it felt wrong. Too generous. Too sudden. Why? I asked, the word coming out as a breathless whisper. Why would you do that? A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, gone before I could be sure it was there. Because, Alara, I believe in community. And because, quite frankly, I could use the help. My eyebrows shot up. Evelyn Reed, the self-sufficient, formidable landlady, needed my help? Help with what? I asked, suspicion warring with a desperate hope. She leaned forward slightly, her gray eyes holding mine. I need an assistant. Someone to help me with my research, with managing the property, with the general demands of my life. I'm getting older, and the workload isn't getting lighter. You're intelligent, you're organized, I've seen your rent payments, always on time, always meticulously labeled. And you're an artist. You have an eye for detail. I believe you could be quite useful. The offer was still staggering, but it made a twisted kind of sense. She wasn't offering pure charity, she was offering a transaction. Room and board in exchange for labor. It was a condition, yes, but a condition I could live with. A condition that allowed me to retain some semblance of dignity. What kind of research? I asked, my mind already racing, trying to picture myself in this new, unexpected role. I'm a historian, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Victorian architecture, specifically. And there's a great deal of documentation, archiving, and cross-referencing that needs doing. It's tedious work, but essential. I hesitated. My life had been about creation, about the messy, vibrant chaos of paint and canvas. Research sounded wry, but it was a roof over my head, a chance to rebuild, and a chance to observe this enigmatic woman up close. Okay, I said, the word feeling both small and monumental. Okay, I'll do it. Thank you, Evelyn, she nodded, a single, decisive movement. Good. Now let's get you settled. And then we can discuss the specifics of your duties. And, Alara, she added, her voice dropping slightly, no more sleeping on park benches. The spare room was indeed small, tucked away at the back of the apartment, overlooking a quiet alley. But it was clean, cozy, and blessedly dry. A narrow bed, a small desk, a wardrobe. The private bathroom was a luxury I hadn't expected. I unpacked my meager belongings, arranging my art supplies on the desk, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and unease. Living under Evelyn Reed's roof, working for her, felt like stepping into a parallel universe. The first few days were a blur of new routines and awkward adjustments. Evelyn was a woman of precise habits. Breakfast at 7:30, a simple affair of toast and tea, eaten in companionable silence. Mornings were dedicated to her research, which meant me poring over dusty ledgers and brittle blueprints, organizing files, and transcribing handwritten notes. Afternoons involved property management tasks, fielding calls from other tenants, coordinating repairs, drafting letters. It was a far cry from the vibrant, intuitive world of my art, but there was a strange satisfaction in the order, the tangible progress. Evelyn, I quickly discovered, was a